Hello, everybody, and welcome to Crime Lab. On the morning of the 22nd of April, 2016, Ohio was shocked to learn the news about a mass shooting that had happened in Piketon, a rural town east of Cincinnati. 7 victims, 6 adults, and a 16-year-old boy were killed in an execution-style massacre. At first, rumors were spread that it was tied to drug trafficking, as the victims owned a cannabis farm. Evidence for cockfighting operations was found as well. After 5 years, it was finally confirmed that the murders were planned and conducted not by a Mexican cartel, but by another family from the same community. The family, which has later been described by the prosecutors as a criminal enterprise, planned the slaughter for months, only for one of the members, Jake, to have sole custody of his daughter. Jake pulled the trigger, shooting the mother of his child as well as her relatives in cold blood. Soon, the investigation became the largest in Ohio's history. It all started on the morning of the 22nd of April, 2016, when Bobby Jo Manley, Dana Roden's sister who stopped by the Rodens' cluster of trailer homes to feed their pets, entered the homes. She didn't expect to witness all of her family dead. At first, she discovered only 2 of 8 bodies as she walked into the Union Hill Road home. She found the bloody bodies of Chris Roden Sr., Dana's ex-husband, and his cousin, Gary. With shaking hands, she called 911 to report the crime at 7:51 a.m. Here is the 911 call audio.
911. Yes, I need to get the 40 victims. Hold on. I need you to tell me the address. What's the address? Give me just a second. We walk to the mailbox. I think my brother-in-law's dead. Okay, what's the address?
By the time the police officers arrived, Bobby Jo, in a frantic search for the rest of her relatives, discovered 2 more bodies. Her brother, James, as he went to the 3rd mobile home, hoped that at least the rest of the family was still alive. Unfortunately, as he reached the door, he realized that he was witnessing the 3rd crime scene. Upon arrival, the police found 3 more victims there. Bobby Jo and James saw Dana's lifeless body, as well as her children's, Hannah, Chris Jr., and Clarence, known as Frankie, and Frankie's fiancée, Hannah Gilley. At 1:26 p.m., 911 operators received another fatal report. An 8th body of an adult male was found at a 4th property in the nearby village of Piketon. It was Chris Sr.'s brother, Kenneth Roden, who lived about 15 minutes away, and was also found executed in the same manner. Among the victims were 7 adults and 1 16-year-old. Only the lives of 3 young children were spared during this tragedy. What's completely heartbreaking is that these children were stuck around the unresponsive caretakers, laying blood-soaked. Frankie and Hannah Gilley's baby was found covered in blood as it was trying to nurse at his mother. Jake's and Hannah's 2-year-old daughter, who was the subject of the couple's quarrel, was staying elsewhere at the time of the murders. As authorities started the investigation, to everyone who was close to the Roden family, one thing was crystal clear. Whoever has done it must have been well known to the family. Chris Roden's pit bulls were found to be alive and perfectly fine. Dogs wouldn't let any strange intruders pass without a fight. Dana Roden's father, Hannah's grandfather, Leonard Manley, said, "Whoever done it knowed the family because there were 2 dogs here that would eat you up, but I ain't gonna say no more." The Pike County residents were struck with fear. Whoever's done it was at large. The motive of the killings wasn't known yet, what made every other family around feel like they could be next. Primarily, it was considered that it might have been some kind of Mexican drug cartel's revenge to settle scores. These assumptions were made upon the discovery of a small marijuana plantation, way too big for personal use, and evidence for cockfighting operations. The possibility of having bloodthirsty gangsters prowling through the secluded area made the paranoia rise even higher. You might think that it's difficult to get away with murder these days. Shockingly, 8 innocent family members got killed in Ohio, and the people responsible for the massacres lived on for the next 5 years. They carefully planned the slaughter 3 months prior to the crime, including having homemade silencers made out of flashlights, and got rid of forensic evidence at the crime scene to avoid detection. As police officers were searching for the killer, or killers who invaded the Roden family's properties one spring night, the Wagners simply denied any involvement. Exactly 5 years after killing his ex-girlfriend and her family, Jake Wagner stood in a courtroom in Pike County and told a judge, "I am guilty, Your Honor." In order to avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty to 23 charges related to the Rodens massacre, including shooting 19-year-old Hannah, the mother of his child. Everything happened in rural Ohio, a secluded county far away from the interests of the public eye, It's one of those distant communities where everyone knows everyone and families stick closely together. However, one of these families living in a hilly corner of Appalachia stuck way too tightly. So much so that they wanted to have complete control over one of the family members' love interest. The control-driven passion was so intense that they were willing to make everything their way, even for the highest price. They didn't even care to kill everyone else in the way to achieve what they have planned. The family members were so bonded together that they seemed to blend into some kind of murderous clan, where everyone was involved. Even the grandmother assisted in the necessary preparations for the perfect crime. Jake Wagner's grandmother, Rita Newcomb, has pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor obstruction charge. In court, Jake Wagner testified to be very close with his mother, Angela Wagner. It seems a little bit disturbing, having in mind that she has pleaded guilty to conspiracy, evidence tampering, and other charges. Jake's father, George Billy Wagner III, with whom he has only a close-ish relationship, maintains his innocence. The Wagners could be described as a close-knit family to say the least. However, they were too close, even by the standards of the small local community. Not only did they homeschool together and share their money, but also they would hold a vote on going through the massacre they planned for months before it happened. A special prosecutor, Angela Canepa, said during a hearing, "This is very much a family affair, all for one and one for all." This unhealthy family dynamics produced an unbalanced, disturbed young man, Jake. Jake, who grew up in a highly controlling environment, became an obsessive individual himself. He started dating a 13-year-old Hannah Roden and got her pregnant 2 years later when he was 20 years old. As she was trying to escape from his influence and domination, he stalked her and threatened her. When Hannah got pregnant with a different man and was clearly breaking out of Jake's influence, it was the last straw for him. Jake even tried to persuade her to falsely list him as the second child's father on the birth certificate. Interestingly, according to The Guardian, Jake and his brother George were also allegedly stalking 2 other women, their respective ex-wives, both of whom are expected to testify that the Wagners made them fear for their lives. As the underage girl and mother of his child wasn't acting the way she was told to, the cultish clan of the Wagners got defensive. Probably perceiving her behavior as a threat or disrespect, they resolved to extreme violence. The trial revealed that the underlying motive behind the execution-style killings was a custody battle. The disagreements over Sophia's upbringing, like where she would live or whom she would stay with, started before she was even born. Other fights were caused by Jake's controlling behaviors, like insisting that Hannah would move in with his parents and brother when she was a pregnant 15-year-old. Hannah, understandably, insisted on having their own place. Jake seemed to be unable to cut the cord and live away from his parents. "I done told you she is living with me now. You can live with us or not, that's your choice," Jake wrote in a text to Hannah on November 4th, 2013. Messages exchanged between Jake and Hannah shed the light on a conflict which led to the violence. "Hannah, I'm telling you right now, make a choice and make it now. If you do this, it's over and I'll take Sophie, and if I have to, by force. I love you with all my heart. If you love me and Sophie, you will make the right choice. I want you to live with me and Sophie. That don't mean we have to stay at my house all the time, but she will live wherever I am." The fights continued for the next 2 years until March 2015, when Hannah messaged Jake, "I don't want to be with you. You hurt me." As Hannah broke up with Jake, the fight over custody of their daughter got worse, reaching its climax when Hannah refused to sign forged legal documents granting custody of her 2-year-old daughter to Jake Wagner. "They will have to kill me first." This message Hannah sent on Facebook in December 2015 is said to be the spark that ignited the Wagners' murderous plans. The Wagners were furious when Jake's efforts were in vain and Hannah was persistent regarding the choices she made. The clan spent the upcoming months plotting the attack. They agreed to kill most of the Roden family members simply because they were there and the Wagners needed to get rid of any witnesses. According to Fox 19, the preparations included buying ammunition, magazines, and brass catchers to collect shell casings rather than leaving them as evidence. Jake bought materials to make silencers for a rifle and 2 handguns. He used cell phone jammers and video surveillance equipment to study the habits of his victims. The 2 brothers even dyed their hair in the week leading up to the killings, and Jake bought a new car so that no one would recognize him. When the fatal night came, they killed Roden's family under cover of darkness. They tried to make the crime scene look like it was drug-related. After the murder, they moved to Alaska but returned to Ohio later. Upon investigation, a shell casing found outside the Wagners' home matched one from a gun that killed 5 of the Rodens. Hannah's daughter Sophia is now 7 years old and is in the care of surviving members of the Roden family. The killed Roden family members were 40-year-old Christopher Roden Sr., his ex-wife, 37-year-old Dana Roden, Their 3 children, 20-year-old Clarence Frankie Roden, 16-year-old Christopher Jr., and Hannah. Clarence Roden's fiancée, 20-year-old Hannah Gilley, Christopher Roden Sr.'s brother, 44-year-old Kenneth Roden, and a cousin, 38-year-old Gary Roden. According to the New York Post, Angela Wagner pleaded guilty to taking part in the murderous plot and agreed to give evidence against her husband and son in exchange for a 30-year prison sentence. George Wagner, the fourth's defense, has argued he was not directly responsible for any of the murders and only went along with the plot out of fear his father would kill Jake. George Wagner III has pleaded not guilty and is expected to go to trial after his son. Mike Allen, a Cincinnati defense attorney who has been following the case, told The Guardian, "I've been a judge, a prosecutor, and a criminal defense lawyer, and it is without question the most complex criminal case that I've seen in my close to 40-year career. The story developing right in front of our eyes had the local community in a chokehold. The captivating crime saga is in fact the biggest investigation in the history of the state. One family carefully conspired to kill the other, but it wasn't careful enough. Even though they calmly planned how to cover up all of the traces after the cold-blooded murder, evidence like the parts of a homemade silencer and the forged documents finally led to them.